Hello, and thank you for your interest in next year's Prior Avenue Reconstruction Project. My name is Jerry Lee. I am a civil engineer with the City of St. Paul Department of Public Works. I am also the project manager of this upcoming project. In this presentation, I hope to cover project information such as where the project is, project scope, and project history. After that, we'll talk about planning type decisions, things that were considered, such as community engagement and input. Next, we will look at the design and the proposed changes out there. We'll cover what you can expect during construction. And lastly, we'll have a little bit of information regarding assessment. So for project information background, I'd like to start with the project limit. The project begins at Gilbert Avenue, which is just north of 94, and ends at University. This makes it a very short project at just 0.28 miles. The volume that we're seeing out here on a daily basis is about 4,600 vehicles a day. Prior is a multimodal arterial route with facilities for bikes, peds, and transit. The Prior Avenue that we know of today was first constructed in 1986 with the sewer separation project. There were no changes on Prior other than 2012, where parking bays were added on the west side to make room for the bike lanes in 2013. But other than that, the pavement is original to that 1986 project, so it's about 35 years old. It's time for some changes. Just to prove that, you can see how the pavement has slowly deteriorated throughout the years according to those pictures. Speaking of deterioration, a way for us to measure the stresses in the pavement is by giving the street a pavement condition index number. That is where we measure every crack, every failure out there, and assign it a value that's reflective of that section. So a PCI rating is a range from 0 to 100, where the higher the number means the better the pavement is. For St. Anthony to Oakley, we have a PCI rating of 17. From Oakley to University, we have a PCI rating of 42. Because the PCI rating is taking an average of the study section, the rating for the northern end at University is higher only because of improvements from the green line. But realistically, we know that the pavement itself on Prior is much lower than that. So following the repair strategies for PCI ratings in the teens is a reconstruction method. Basically what that means is we'll take the pavement section and the pavement base, which is like the upper 24-inch, and replace it with new material. And while we have that pavement removed, it's also a good time for us to tackle any utility improvements below the road. So there will be some of that, which I'll talk more about later. Next, we'll talk about planning decisions, what we've done so far for community engagement, and how this project falls or ties with city plan and visions. Some tools that we use in planning was the zoning, bike, and pedestrian plan. For zoning, we see that the project falls on a industrial zone, which is the purple, and a traditional neighborhood zone, which is the orange. The industrial zone informs us of the type of vehicles that we should expect out there. Much larger trucks means it's going to restrict the street geometry, things like turning radius, turning movements, and lane dimensions. And then for traditional neighborhood, what that tells us is that any improvements we bring on with this project, we should foster the growth and development of an urban village, which is the definition of a traditional neighborhood. So for bike plan, we see that Prior Avenue falls on the bike network. It's one of the few routes that can get you across 94 and as far north as Pierce Butler. We know from traffic volumes out here, Pryor Avenue is one of the lower, if not lowest, route in terms of traffic volume. That makes this bike facility very favorable to the biking community. We also heard from that community that Pryor Avenue is the least topographically challenged route. So more power to using Pryor, and we should keep those aspects in mind as we design the project. Lastly, the pedestrian plan shows Pryor totally within the green zone. Green zone represents a area of high priority for making walking investments. So any changes that we bring with the project will have to be considerate of ped safety and pedestrian improvements. For community engagement, the first time we notified residents of the project was earlier in the summer in August of 2021. We sent letters out to the nearby properties, the tenants, business owner, property owners, inform them of the upcoming project. Along with that, we also install temporary project signs shown in blue there. The goal of both notification methods were just to draw awareness to the project and get people to visit our website, because on there was where we had a link to the survey just to learn more about the community and give residents a chance to voice their opinion about the project. And then another form of engagement that we performed was presenting the project to the Transportation Committee. That was on November 10th. That's a committee made up of representatives from all district councils in the city, where recommendations and inputs are made regarding transportation project. From that meeting, we were recommended to proceed with our design. I'll cover the survey portion before I talk about the design of the project. What we heard from the community was 45% of the survey takers lived on and near Pryor. More than 75% of them drive, just as much bike. 42% walked, and less than a quarter uses transit. So that gives us an idea of who's actually taking the survey, what their use are, where the demographic lies. And so in the survey, we asked them to rank what their level of importance is in terms for the different project elements, just to see what people valued most. So for the tree and the green space, almost half of them said it was very important. For bike lanes, more than half said it was most important. For sidewalk, about half again said it was very important. And then for parking, surprisingly, almost 70% said that parking was the least important component on this project, which came to a surprise to us due to the fact that Pryor Avenue sat untouched from 1986 to today, only with the 2012 parking bay addition. And so we thought parking bay would rank higher here, but it didn't, which is okay. It gives us some guidance on how to move forward or what we need to consider as we impact these various facilities. And then overall, what we were hearing most from the community was that Pryor is a safe, quiet, low volume, low speed route, and everyone loves the trees out there. So taking into consideration the pavement, history, and condition, the planning districts, the community input, the next step would be to determine what design works for this section of Pryor Avenue. In the current form, from property line to property line, starting with the west side or the left side of the screen here, we have a 5 feet sidewalk. ADA requirement for sidewalk is 4 feet. In the city, we say the minimum is 5 feet. So here, this design meets our standard. The boulevard is 8 feet. 8 feet gives us plenty of room to make changes. Unfortunately, this side of the West Boulevard is home to the high power transmission line. So it would be pretty difficult for us to make changes over here due to challenges with utility relocation. So basically that means we won't be touching the western curb line. As we make our way into the street, we're first welcomed by a 5 feet bike lane. The bike lane meets state and federal guidance. So bike lanes are appropriate for this use. However, we understand that 5 feet can be difficult to use, being that there's a 2 feet gutter pan there. So that really only leaves you 3 feet of pavement to bike on. With that, we would prefer to increase the bike lane to 6 feet, which is our standard. Then we have the 11-foot through lane. There are cases where we can reduce through lanes down to 10 feet. However, like I said earlier, we are in an industrial zone, and due to the funding and the district zone, we have to keep the street lane at 11 feet to meet state requirement. So for northbound, it's the same thing. We have the 11-foot through lane, which will stay. The 5 feet bike lane, we'd like to increase to 6 feet. And then for the parking lane is a 7-foot parking lane. We won't be proposing any changes there just due to the low interest. And then the boulevard for the east side is again another 8-footer. So here, because we don't have the utility lines, we do have room to make improvement or changes on this side. Next, we have a 6 feet sidewalk. It's not unusual for us to have 6 feet sidewalk on these arterial roads. 6 feet is good, so we'll probably keep the sidewalk at 6 feet. One thing that cannot be represented in this view is the other ped improvements that we're bringing with the project. So things like ped ramp upgrades, bump outs, and lighting, those are all improvements that we're bringing from a pedestrian experience. So how do we actually incorporate these changes into the project? If we take a look at the cutaway views here, the one above is the existing, the one below is the proposed section. We are able to add a 6 feet bike lane on southbound with a 1-foot center line shift to the east side. And then same way, we would add a 6 feet bike lane on northbound. We can do that by widening the pavement by a total of 2 feet. This comes at the cost of reducing the boulevard down to 6 feet from 8 feet. 6 feet is our minimum that ensures healthy tree growth and room snow storage. So we meet just the minimum there. Then sidewalk stays the same for both sides. Taking a look at the project from the top down, other improvements we see bring with this project is crossing just right after the bridge over 94, crossing of Pryor. Then we also have a tightening of radius turning into Gilbert, as shown by the 2 blue arrows there. The dash line that one of the arrows pointing to is the existing curb line. So we are moving the curb in significantly. This comes at it benefits the project because we are reducing the crossing distance across Gilbert. It also gets vehicles that are turning onto Gilbert some more restriction on turning speed. So getting people to slow down would promote safety at this intersection. Then we have some horizontal and vertical adjustments underneath the CP Railroad Bridge. The reason we're doing that is because the center line underneath the bridge is sort of uncertain. It jogs left and right. So we would like to just make it one smooth curve underneath the bridge there. The reason why we're adjusting the pavement vertically is because we want to plan for future rehab projects on prior, maybe 10 to 15 years from now. If we were to do an overlay, we wouldn't have to worry about meeting vertical clearance because this project would have already dropped the road low enough. Going past St. Anthony and Feronia, we have one bump out on the north side of Feronia, and that bump out will be accommodated with a new crossing of prior new ped ramps on the west side. The benefit of the bump out is that it brings pedestrians closer to the travelway, making them more visible, and then it also reduces the crossing distance. And moving up towards University, we have another set of bump outs at Oakley. These bump outs will be accompanied by new ped ramps on the west side to assist with the crossing. A big change for the west side is the addition of sidewalk between the parking lots of Breakthrough Beverage and the Days Inn Hotel. There's about 380 feet of sidewalk missing today, and putting in the sidewalk will cover that gap. And then lastly, we are making some changes at the intersection. It's mostly just pavement marking to better identify the lane designations and prevent the intersection from being a free-for-all. This channelization does come at the cost of eliminating parking on the northbound side just north of the alley. That's really all of our project. The ped improvements, the bike lane widening. Other than that, everything else remains the same. So you might ask why this design works. If we revisit the community survey, we see that for green space, half the participant agreed trees are very important, so this design ensures that the most tree can be saved. For bike lanes, because it was voted most important, we retain the bike lanes, but we do get the opportunity to increase it to the preferred width. And then for sidewalks, the sidewalk itself won't change much, but we are adding that infill and making improvements to the crossings. For parking, there are no changes to parking other than the loss of space at bump outs in University. Hopefully that won't get taken the wrong way because the survey result voted that as not important. So hopefully we don't get too much pushback there. I'll also note that the total loss of parking here is about 7 spaces out of the 30 parking spots that's available on northbound today. And then just some other things on why this design works. It aligns with our zoning district, ped and bike plan. We accomplished the goal of reviving the service life in the pavement. And ultimately, this design was the most cost effective and least disruptive way to meet the needs and value of the community. I'll also mention that we did look at other design options with this project, one of which included a off-street bike trail, which I'll talk more about next in the next slide. So the off-street bike trail was a design that included a 10-feet bike path and a 6-feet sidewalk, or up to a 16 feet combined use multi-use trail. This design is achieved by reducing the street down by 9 feet on the east side, and this makes this option a very desirable and attractive concept as it provides a protected off-street facility for non-motorists. However, this design had many geometrical challenges, such as lowering the center line of the road. For example, if we were to project the ped and bike space at the property line out towards the street to promote positive drainage, the new curb line, as shown on the screen there, would be lower than the existing pavement. And the only way to fix that would be to lower the profile or the elevation of the road. Doing that would be too disruptive and cost prohibitive. Then there were also difficulties in designing how the trail facility begin and end within the project limit to create a seamless connection to the on-street bike facilities north and south of the project. It just didn't make sense for us to make this change in a quarter-mile long project when the entire system of prior is something else. Lastly, the new facility would require utility relocation, being that most of the underground utility today are in the northbound parking lane. It wouldn't be desirable for us to have utilities underneath what would be the boulevard, just plant trees there. So I mentioned earlier that there are utility improvements coming along with this project. Here we'll start talking about what those improvements are. It's not uncommon with our street reconstruction project that we do a water main replacement. Sometimes the water main will stretch the entire length of the project, but for prior, we are only replacing the water main within the intersection of St. Anthony. That's where it's at its source. The water main is approximately 8 feet deep and will be replaced with 8 feet ductile iron or PVC pipes. If the water work impacts your property, temporary water will be provided. And temporary water is brought to your property with a 2-inch PVC pipe laid outside your yard or front of your property. The water inside the temporary system is just as safe as the water that was coming into your home before we started our project. Because the pipe is above ground, you will notice that the water can be quite warm when it's hot outside. And while you are connected to the temporary water pipe, there are no charges for your water use just because that water is not being metered. So how we actually get the water into your home or property, it will be connected to your outside hose spigot. We'll install proper fittings so that you can continue to use your water to water your grass or have other use. You can continue that use as normal. There may be instances where we need to access your house or building to shut off the water meter. But of course, all of that work will only happen after we've given you the proper notifications. And between your water meter and the water main, we'll replace your service connection if it's lead. If you have existing copper service connection, we'll only need to work on it at the street. Once that work is all complete, you'll have your permanent water back and we'll disconnect the temporary service. Next, I'd like to talk about sanitary sewer. This is one that may directly impact your property if you choose. When we do a project, we allow property owners the option of replacing their sanitary sewer service connection with our contractor. And if you opt to be provided that service, our contractor will replace the connection where it meets the public sewer to your property line. Unfortunately, the portion behind the property line to your house can only be replaced by a private contractor. If you want to proceed with work on the private side, you will need to hire your own contractor. That work doesn't have to happen with our project. Here are some signs of your service that might need attention or need to be replaced. Some quick ones would be if it drains slowly, if you have sewer odors, if you're not really sure where your sewer goes, if you have trees planted over your sewer line, if you haven't had any preventative maintenance performed on your sewer in the past. It depends on how you use your garbage disposal, and if you're noticing sinkholes or depression near your house. Those are all signs of defective sewer service. I also like to say that if your sewer service is older than 50 years old, it's highly recommended that you consider replacing it with the project. Just some more problems that we have seen out there is drop connections at the main. That is where your service is disconnected from the public sewer in the street. And we also have instances of a broken clay pipe. Most pipes from the house to the street is clay. It's very brittle. It does break. So it's not uncommon. And lastly, if there are trees or plants above your sewer line, it's not unusual for us to see root intrusions into the sewer service. So some benefits of having your sanitary sewer service replaced with our project is that it extends the service life. It reduces the chance of future issues. And lastly, it's just more economical to replace your service with our project at a wholesale value. You don't pay for the street restoration that you normally would if you were to take on the work yourself. And then the financing plans are much more flexible because you have the ability to pay for it through assessment up to 20 years. Again, just some cost comparison. So to do it with our project, it would be about $3,500. You can roll that into your assessment. There are less things that you pay for with doing it with our contractor because the street restoration would just be done with our street project. And then if you're looking to do it yourself at a later date, it's going to be about $5,000. The only reason why we would like for you to replace your service if it's in bad condition with our project is that it's more convenient for the neighborhood. It's just because it reduces future disturbance and inconvenience for everyone. If you do own a property on Pryor, the sewer request letter did go out a few weeks ago. If you haven't received it, you can reach out to me or our sewers division. Their contact information is at the end of the presentation here too. So you still got some time. Next, we'll go over what it's like to live through a construction project and just some things you can expect. So a quick rundown of a possible road construction sequence would be one like in the first pick is where we do removals, utility work, and rough grading. Once that's complete, contractor may start pouring curbs and other hardscape. In the third picture, once the curbs are in, they might start some final grading work and prep for paving as shown in that last picture there. And then once we are done with paving, we'll proceed to restoration of the boulevard. And that would be the end of construction after one season. So while construction is going on, you can expect there will be noise, dust, mud, access limitation, and overall inconvenience. We'll do our best to minimize disruption, but there are no guarantees. Your street will be dug up numerous times. There will be delay and stoppage. The work is done in layer, starting with the deepest and often by different crews or contractor. It will start to feel like there is no sense of direction, which way the project's going, but this is all dependent of our contractor scheduling. We don't have control over their means and methods, how they choose to do their work, but we'll do our best to keep the project between 4 to 5 months or one summer season construction. We'll keep you updated with the weekly updates if you're signed up on our website to let the residents know what's going on. And most importantly, we will maintain access local and emergency at all times. All the construction will be done by private companies. The city does not have their own construction workforce. That said, we do uphold our contractors to the same values and ethics of any city employee. The work will be weather dependent. The contractor will work 5 to 6 days a week and up to a 12-hour shift beginning at 7 a.m. While work is happening, there will always be a city representative on site every day to inspect the contractor's work and assist with questions and community interaction if there are any. Some signs to watch out for is the road close to through sign. That's where you can get to your house, but won't be able to go all the way through. Eventually, you will come across a road closed sign. That's when you can't go beyond the sign, this is usually due to some type of work beyond the sign, such as utility work where the street is impassable. So when we do start construction, you'll receive a letter. You want to keep this for the names and contact that are on there. Right before construction begins, usually a week before it starts, we'll be passing out flyers. If you have questions, you should always call the on-site inspector first. If you're unable to reach them, you can give me a call, but I'll most likely volley your question or request over to them because they will know more about the day-to-day activities that are out there. Lastly, if you want project updates, they are posted on our website. Again, there will be an emailing list that you can subscribe to, which we will send out notifications and updates as they become available. Next, I'll talk about assessment. Generally, street reconstructions are funded by our reconstruction bonds or municipal state aid. In this case, we are using the municipal state aid funds. There will be some local participation with the project costs that's going to be assessed to a budding property owner. The estimated assessment has not been determined yet, but we will come out with those numbers before the project starts. And you only get assessed the cost of construction only after the project is complete. And then if you opt to have your sewer replaced, like I said earlier, that's a separate assessment that will be billed to your property. If you have questions about assessment, feel free to visit the website there at www.stpot.gov/assessments. And that wraps up our project. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Jerry Lee. My phone number is 651-266-1107. When the project gets closer to construction, we will come out with the project inspector's information as well. If you have questions about certain aspects of the project, such as lighting, parks, rec for trees, water, sewers, assessment, their contact information is all there. So feel free to reach out to anybody on this list. Again, thank you for your time, and I hope to at least talk to some of you next year when we start. Thank you.